The freehold of Valyria stretched across the very width of this world, from isles in Westeros to the painted mountains of the homelands, and all the way across the many deserts past marines. There was no part of Essos in the world beyond it, and not at the very least have its daily life affected by the sheer power of the dragons and the wealth of the blood of Valyria. Yet despite that power, one day it was all gone. Just past a century ago now, all the hills of Valyria exploded with fire, filling the air above with smoke and ash. The 14 flames brought forth molten rock, which crushed all beneath it and laid ruin to the mighty empire. Dragonglass rained from the sky, leaving behind a thick and horrid mist which burned the land. And once the earthquake ceased, the land had been shattered into uninhabitable islands, dead souls and empty homes. Only a smoking sea remains of that once prosperous land. Not all the dragons died, and not all the dragon riders. 12 years before the collapse, Daenerys the Dreamer had convinced her father to flee Valyria for Dragonstone, where dragons would rule, and House Targaryen would live. Until Aegon decided that an island was not enough for his ambitions, and soon all of Westeros came to heel. Other families would stake their claim in Westeros, Velaryon and Celtigar among them. Other Valyrians would flee to lands around Valyria, staking claim and fighting fiercely for whatever lands they could find. Others would attempt to reclaim the ashes, only for the weathers and the horrors left in Valyria to destroy them. One house, however, remained put. Granted the Isle of Valyria some 29 years before the Doom, House Cynthia would become the lords and protectors of this isle, which brought with it mighty wealth and a mightier keep. And for the next 120 years, House Cynthia would remain on the isle. As Valyria fell and all around them died, they would remain upon their island. As people asked for shelter, they kept their gates closed. Nothing would root them from their spot. Well, so they believed. House Cynder was a lesser house which also inhabited the Isle of Valyria, though in truth they lived more as noble guests and aides to the lords of the Isle rather than anything of true worth. Unlike House Cynthia, House Cynder was descended from dragon lords and had mighty strength in their bloods. It was, however, overshadowed by bastard origins, which in Valyrian culture prevented them from being anything more than a lowly and a meek house. They had essentially lived as well-kept and well-paid servants for House Cynthia for a century, their title and wealth maintained only through a tradition and a belief that high Valyrian blood was worth more to marry into than compared with diluted Illyrian blood, and for that reason, House Cynthia entertained them. The house was named for what they had been born from, the ashes of Valyria, the cinders of its doom. All of the main house had lived within Valyria and passed away in the doom, leaving behind only a bastard and his wife, to form their legacy, whatever that would be. 100 years later, only one Cynder remained, Rhaegar Cynder. His mother died in childbirth and his father died when he turned 12 due to a weak heart and a weaker liver, leaving the boy in the hands and care of Lord Danis Cynthia, serving him as a squire and ward, for if his blood died, Cynthia would be the only Valyrian blood left upon that isle with an ounce of nobility in it, and that simply wouldn't do. 4 years ago, the people of Valyria were stunned by the sights that brought fear and hope in equal measure. A dragon above their heads. It was a small thing, barely noticeable at first, yet it still breathed fire and spat at those who neared it. It was a wild beast, not even a year old. Too small and frail to do anything beyond fly and scream. Lord Danis Cynthia was not directly descended from Dragon Lord and seed, only Valyrian blood, so he saw no need for the beast, refusing for it to stay in Valyria, causing the beast to fly weakly towards shelter elsewhere. At that time it was only the size of a dog, and flew towards a cavern on the east side of the isle. Rhaegar seized this opportunity to make a name for himself. A year later he departed the keep, informing Lord Cynthia that he would prove himself by slaying the dragon and returning with its head. It was a stupid ambition and a worse idea from someone who was supposed to be a smart boy. He should have known a dragon at that age by that time 3 years old, still a great threat due to its sheer size. The Lord Cynthia thought it was a bad idea. In any other day, he would have stopped the boy, remembered the noble blood, but he'd become something of a nuisance with his attitude, and as such, Lord Cynthia ignored it, and bade him farewell on his quest off to fight this beast, expecting him never to return. But the creature did not seem to strike out or attack the young Rhaegar. Instead, the boy made a bond with the dragon. He spent time in the caves, most believing he died in the attempt to slay the dragon. But instead, he lived and learned with it, providing it with food he'd hunted from nearby shepherds. He'd not fully tamed it, but he'd done enough to teach the beast to fly with him upon his back. That alone gave him the means to pursue a new goal. He was no strong man or weak knight by any means, but he knew the history, and he knew how to talk. He knew how to talk very well, in fact. Diplomacy was the only thing the boy had to his name. Until now. He knew if he flew into Valyria on Dragonback, he would either walk out the city in flames and a title bestowed upon him, or, if he talked, he would get the title without bloodshed. He'd give Lord Danis a chance to kneel. And so he flew that day across the island upon the back of the stray dragon, one that he had taken the name Majesty, and landed in the court of Lord Cynthia. Already there were many who had feared him or respect him for the sheer act of seeing a man upon Dragonback. There were those who had come to the courtyard to witness this dragon, and a 19-year-old perched upon its back. Those who witnessed the event spoke to many of the scribes, recording the encounter in their tomes. Lord Cynthia, I thank you for your learning, Rhaegar spoke, still mounted upon the dragon, rubbing his hands along its back. Though I believe it's best you and your family left this isle, and grant to me what shall be mine by blood of old Valyria. You petulant boy, the Lord spoke. That beast is still a babe, and you still a boy who needs to know better in his life. I am the blood of Valyria, it courses through me, and it was they who sent me to sit upon this seat, and they who lit your descendants wash out our boots and watch our growth. I've grown tired of your family's blood. Go on, well, it seems the Lord had more to say, but no chance to say it. The boy did not even command it, yet his beast opened its jaw and shot forth a horrifying array of pure fire, which melted Lord Danis in that very spot, leaving behind naught but ash and cinder in its path. From that day, Lord Rhaegar Cynder took his place at the seat of Valyria, claiming the Valyrian Isle for his own, though his beast was still not truly tamed and held no dragon pits to care for it. Though as time, the two would come to be more than just a wild, shaggy beast and a rider, as the blood of Valyria old connected them. Nonetheless, the people would fear him, for who would not fear a man with a dragon on his own? Especially when such beasts had laid waste to the so-called kings of Westeros, and placed upon their throne a new king. Some believed that Lord Rhaegar could do the same. He could be the Lord of the Ashes, to rebirth Valyria, to bring together a new age, that this young dragon was a sign that things could still be born from those horrid wastes. A young dragon, born from a century of blood. Others believed this was a sign of the end, that Lord Danis' death had come from an ill-tempered boy riding an ill-trained dragon. All it would take was one ill-fated move and the entire Isle of Valyria could burn in dragon smoke. Such people fled the Isle, heading to Tolos or to any of the cities in Slaver's Bay. Those who remained found themselves captivated by the young Lord Rhaegar, a man with a way with words that could not be denied, even if the skill of battles were lost on him. But who needed a battle when you had a beast of fire and blood?